welcome everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you at least, yes. Very good.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar about teaching high school science with virtual labs. My name is Mark Fuller. I am part of the product team here at Labster, and I'm joined by two esteemed colleagues today. First of all, we have Michael Whitaker, our CEO.
Hi, everyone. Michael here. Good to see you.
And also Dr. Suzanna Katz from Staten Island Academy.
Hello.
All right, well, a couple of housekeeping items as we get started today. We're going to be using a kind of a polling solution. We want to make this interactive. We want to make this as rewarding as it possibly can be for you. So we'll have questions and answers throughout the session, of you kind of sending them in, and then we'll dedicate some time towards the end for actually going through each of your questions. We're using an app called Slido. So if you open your phones now, or maybe your browser, a web browser, and go to slido.com/labster, you will be able to enter your questions, and then we'll have some poll questions pop up for you as well as we go. So there's a little bit of a quiz involved here. So yeah, absolutely. If you just take a few moments here, slido.com, and Michael will walk you through it a bit more. But
I'll give you a little demo. We'll have a demo question coming up as well.
Exactly, in just a few moments. So the webinar today will be recorded. So we'll be able to send that out after the fact for anyone who has any issues accessing or attending today's webinar. And for questions afterwards, absolutely go to www.labster.com. You can always open up our chat window, which is in the lower right of our website, and ask questions to our team. We'll be able to point you in the right direction to kind of get answers for your questions. So today's presentation should be about 30 to 45 minutes. I think closer to 45 with questions. But again, we encourage you to send those in, to interact, and we'll do our best to answer them. So the agenda today, if I can just click through this, is we'll start off talking a little bit about Labster. And what is Labster? How do we help you all teach science at the high school level with virtual labs? Michael will speak a little bit about where Labster is being used in high schools today. And then Dr. Katz will take over and then share her experiences teaching with Labster for, I think is it 2 years or so now?
Yeah.
Dr. Katz, is that? Great, okay. And so talk about her tips, her experiences a little bit, and then hopefully that will feed into the Q&A later on. And then I'll mention a kind of a few tips for getting set up with Labster and access in general. So Michael, do you want to take this over?
Yes, perfect. Oh, so as Mark said, we really want to make this interactive. It's much more fun if we all participate, especially in these webinars. And I see already now on your mobile phone, if you load it up there or in your browser, if you go to Labster or slido.com/Labster, great, we're already getting the answers coming in. So please all make sure you join in on the fun here. Add the state and or country if you're outside of the US that you're joining from, so that we can first and foremost just check that the technology is working, which is always good, and also see where you're from. So we got a lot of people from California, which is great, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Ohio, New York. That's awesome, guys. Really cool to see. All over the country, which is awesome. Very, very nice. And it looks like the technology is working. So I think with that, we are ready to kick off. So we got a bunch of different, we have other polls coming for you here later in the webinar. And also you will see in the app, you will see that there's a Q&A button at the top as well. Please ask questions. We have Hillary, who is here in the webinar with us today as well from our team, and she's going to moderate the questions coming in, and you can upvote those questions again. So make sure you upvote the questions, make sure you ask questions, because then we can answer your top questions. So please participate. That makes this webinar so much better. And I think with that, we should be ready to kick off the presentation, right? Great. So I'll start out just for a very few minutes here, just talk a little bit about what is Labster, just for those of you who are completely new to Labster or also have used it a little bit. So really, we are a virtual laboratory simulator. The simplest way I can explain it always is like a flight simulator, but for training scientists. and we create this incredible immersive learning experience. And I think if we go to the next slide, I will visualize that for you with a video, which is always better with this type of solution or product. So really what we provide is this fully immersive experience where the students can walk into an unlimited laboratory with access to all the incredible equipment that you can imagine, with even expensive equipment, or doing animal testing or dangerous experiments that you often couldn't even do in the most fancy, expensive physical laboratory. So while this is of course a time where virtual is needed and critical, we've been offering Labster for many, many years to help teachers provide access to high quality learning in science, even in a condition of where you might have already a physical lab. So there's also many cases where there's difficult concepts that we teach the students, and in those cases we might need to bring in animations or use storytelling to really engage the students as well in the learning. And we find, especially when we find really good storylines to teach the students not just how to use a specific concept or understand a specific concept, but also learn why it's important that they learn these concepts and how they can apply them to solve real-world challenges. In those cases, that's really where we see the student engagement go up and their student motivation, which all, of course, helps really the students learn better and more. And we've done numerous research studies, 16 peer-reviewed published studies that shows both learning outcomes increase. But one of the things I'm really proud of, especially also, is how we see students who are typically struggling in the classroom settings can actually also, with this learning experience, catch up often with the students in the classroom, because they can continue at their own pace. They can repeat the experiments until they really ensure that they know and fully understand the concepts before they move on. So, just a very quick overview here. If you see some of the elements of the Labster virtual labs, which are really full learning experiences. So we have the realistic simulations where we simulate even chemical formulas on a molecular level to create realistic reactions that you would see in a real physical labs. We have the real life stories that engages the students, a lot of research that really this works. It's not just looks fancy, it actually really works and helps engage the students and helps them learn more. We have the immersive animations for complex concepts, quizzes to always ensure we know that the students understand the concepts. And these quizzes, by the way, integrate with learning management systems. So that helps you also automate the grading, which can really help reduce workload as well for you as a teacher. So we continuously work on improving these as well with teacher dashboards that give you insight into where are the students struggling the most, so that you in follow-up lectures can really focus on teaching those specific topics. And and then last but definitely not least, we have this opportunity in the virtual world to introduce failure-driven learning. We can actually let the students experiment and fail in a healthy way for their learning, so that it can really reflect on the concepts and understand them better, which we've seen greatly help as well. So I think, that's about it for this slide. If we can jump to the next one. So here's an overview of the many different courses. I'll cover it very briefly here, but as you can see, Labster has a wide range of courses. In fact, more than 150 different simulations, with new simulations launching every single month. And for this course, for this webinar, Mark will talk a lot more about the really interesting simulations we launched earlier this year. So yeah, take it away, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think obviously today's webinar is dedicated to high schools, especially. But I think here in attendance today, we know that we have folks from independent schools, from public schools, from that are interested at the district level, different places. So I think that, you know, hopefully what we can make available today is information that works for everybody, whatever kind of level or type of institution that you're dialing in from today. But we did, as Michael mentioned, we have about 150 total simulations on a vast array of different topic areas, right? From biology to chemistry to physics, organic chemistry, ecology, cellular molecular biology, many different areas. There's a vast catalog. But earlier in 2020, we did release a specific high school simulation package. It's about 50 or 60 titles dedicated in there. And what we've done for you is curated little packages here. So one that's more focused on biology, one in chemistry, one in physics. We identified a few of the core simulations, and then there's a number of related simulations. And what we mean is this is a core fundamental topic that's typically covered, and then often there are many other Labster simulations, as you can see with biology, 21 additional simulations in that package that get used, I think, quite heavily, honestly, from people teaching biology in that case. But what's really interesting here is that we have curated this high school package and launched many new simulations earlier this year, some of which the level was adjusted a little bit, some were completely new. And in other cases, perhaps we combined a simulation. I can use cell division as an example here. You see over on the left, we have an independent mitosis simulation, an independent meiosis simulation, but in this case, we actually combine them in case you would rather have a more sort of high-level overview of the experience for your students, if that's more helpful. But I will say, beyond just these high school level simulations, we have this vast college level catalog. And what we find again and again and again, and Suzanne is an example of that, is that people are using these. People want to push their students. Maybe you teach AP. Maybe your students are just chomping at the bit to really move beyond the curriculum, or you just find different topics, right? And you want to pull in different types of materials. So what we find is a lot of schools, a lot of teachers find value in mining the entire catalog, because everyone approaches the topic perhaps a little bit differently. That being said, we do align these simulations to curriculum standards, right? So we have a PDF that we can distribute after the fact, probably send an email tomorrow with the recording of this simulation, of this webinar, and a few other things. But that can include a PDF that essentially aligns many of our high school simulations with next generation science standards, international baccalaureate standards, and AP standards as well, to make it a little bit easier to integrate it with your course. And by the way, on the website, you can always look at a simulation's learning objectives, description of what it teaches and what it covers, just to learn a little bit more about, is this the right fit for you, for your students at this, for this particular class, or for this particular group. And Michael mentioned the research before. I won't go into this in depth, but on our website, on our research page, there's an enormous amount of peer-reviewed published research. This was published in Nature Biotechnology. If increased learning outcomes is one big component of what we see again and again and again using Labster. Either using Labster in lieu of kind of a lecture method, or oftentimes in addition. And so you can see that there 101% increase using Labster in addition to traditional teaching, more of a lecture-based method for covering a particular topic. Another big outcome that we see often is if you look at this yellow line, students who are coming to your class, coming to a topic with the least amount of knowledge, improve the most.
The green line, I should correct.
The green line, sorry, rather, yeah, my screen's a little bit different. And so what we see again and again is Labster really helps level students up. So they're kind of working from a similar starting point in terms of understanding the subject matter. And we see here motivation, self-efficacy, just knowledge retention, things like that. But I think Labster can be a great leveler in a lot of cases. So we want to talk a little bit about using Labster in high schools, and I think what we're doing today. So Michael, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so following up on that and our launch here of this full high school solution and package, we of course saw a huge, massive need as the COVID-19 hit here just a few weeks back. So if you jump to the next slide, what we really realize is that the world, there's a big demand out there right now, and we as a company really need to step up and help the community. So we launched a special, what we call a quick access solution in response to this, to allow as many teachers and students around the world to get access as fast as possible. And we wanted to make it really sort of a one-click get access, go and limit any type of IT integration solutions, any challenges with that. We wanted to kind of move away. And we're really proud. This is actually not even up to date now. This was up until 2 weeks ago. We saw more than 15,000 teachers, especially in North America, sign up to use this as part of their classroom lectures. And we're really honored and proud, of course, that we were able to service this many teachers, and we'll be committed to doing this. And so many of you are here on the webinar today. I just want to say thank you for your support and for your trust in us. We will and we are working incredibly hard to continuously service you with continuously improvements to our simulations, mapping services, and as well as the trainings that we want to do as part of this webinar. So this is a series of many different initiatives that we're doing every single day here at Labster to help you. And we want to hear from you. We want to get feedback from you on how we can do better and how we can even help you further. So ask questions, of course, here in this webinar. Respond also to the email that we send out here later today and tomorrow. Let us know what you need and how we can best service you. That's our mission here at Labster, and we are doing everything we possibly can. So as a result of this, we have launched a special COVID-19 response solution, heavily discounted, free actually in most cases. So you can go to labster.com/COVID-19 to read more about this, where we talk about this. And I think we'll send out, Mark, the link as well in the follow-up email for those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great, and I'm actually just curious, while we're talking about this, I mean, Suzanna, do you want to say a few words about your experience in the past 6 or 8 weeks?
Sure. I have to say, at least we're a small school, so the transition was rather smooth because we kind of had a feeling that this was happening. There were schools that were public schools that actually closed before we did. And because they actually had positive cases. We didn't have any positive cases at the time, but we went with the governor mandates, and we went under quarantine. But luckily, it was right when we entered our spring break. So we had a couple of weeks to actually, our administration on the back end to set up our Microsoft Teams and the solution that we would be using to actually do our lectures. And on my end, it was already a pretty smooth transition because I was already using so many online resources. I had PowerPoints for lectures, I had worksheets prepared, and this is kind of what I've been doing. So actually my general flow, which I'll go over later in this presentation, has been fairly similar. Of course, there's a little bit less back and forth. You could ask the students things, and sometimes, they're just there, and you don't know if they're just muting themselves or what they're doing. So there's of course challenges in terms of the interaction component, but that's where something like Labster really comes in useful, because at least they're getting this back and forth, this dynamic interaction with the topic in some way. But overall, I think it hasn't been as bad as we expected it to be. I think that the technology has been there in place to help us through this.
That's great. Yeah, I know that at this point, everyone is scrambling. As Michael mentioned, I mean, that has been the focus of everything that Labster is working on, and since earlier mid-March at this point. And it includes updates every single week. As Michael mentioned, to the product, we're trying to reduce loading times. Always released a series of updates to over 20 simulations last Friday, and every week we're making these changes in waves, pulling people off other projects to help with support and things like that. So that it's really nice to hear that your experience has been relatively smooth so far, though, Suzanna.
And so, just to jump in, we are getting a lot of questions around will teachers be able to go through the full simulation activity before assigning to students?
Yeah, I could maybe quickly answer that one. So we have built also a whole faculty resource solution, and we also continuously upgrading that. So yes, we can provide access to that, where you can go through the simulations, try them, and read more about them. I think also, Mark, you can maybe confirm this with access to quiz questions that will be provided to students as well, or?
Well, absolutely. So through the quick access page that we've set up, you should be able to access the entire simulations right there. So absolutely, there's no limit to the number of simulations that you can play, the number of times you can play it. And so I think it depends a little bit on the solution that you have set up, but absolutely, in either case, you'll be able to play the simulations before you assign anything. So.
And I can maybe just see the other quick top question I see is around LMS integration. So I'll just quickly take one more. So whether we integrate with Google Classroom and Canvas, and the answer is yes. For Canvas especially, we have integration with Gradebook as well. Google Classroom Gradebook integration is one of the things we're actually working on right now, which will be out in a few weeks from now as well. But you can already include the simulations as part of the Google Classroom. And so we work with any major LMS system today, Blackboard, Moodle as well. So just quickly answering that one. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point, and we'll cover that a little bit later as well. And I think just on this point, this idea about access and what we're trying to do here, I mean, Labster has quite a bit of experience with widespread access. We have been for some time now setting up over 300,000 Danish high school students with access to Labster. We recently have set up all of the California Community College system, which is nearly 2 million students at once, with access to our virtual lab simulations to supplement everything they're doing in terms of science education. We, a couple of years ago, partnered with Google and Arizona State University to launch the world's first fully online biology degree. So absolutely, very accustomed to rolling out online science education and on virtual labs to large numbers of students quickly. So absolutely, we can get people set up very fast. And that may just be for an individual teacher or a school or an entire district. In addition to that, we see Labster being used not just, of course, at the high school level or at the community college level, but Stanford, Harvard. We're being used at many of the top universities in the world. We partnered with MIT on building a simulation. So when I was talking about access to that college level catalog, I think some of the names on this, some of the logos on this list give you a sense of where we're being used in different contexts. Just a quick quote here from one of our friends at the Hammond School. A lot of these have come in recently. It's been great to hear from those, again, from public schools, from independent schools. We recently set up an agreement with the MISBO consortium for those who may be a part of that for various independent schools. But again, we're working with schools, with districts, as much as we can to provide access to many teachers at once. So we want to talk a little bit about teaching with Labster, and this is, I think, what a lot of you, are most curious to hear about today. So one question before I turn it over to Suzanna is, just wanted to ask about, what topics you're teaching right now. So kind of curious, if you open up your Slido app on your phone or in your web browser and want to post an answer, I think we'll be interested just to see where people are coming from today. Okay, it's always fun to see it moving in real time. A lot of biology, a lot of chemistry, definitely, and we know there's many other topics, so I'm sure we could include a much longer list.
And on the other side, for the other topic, we do have many other topics besides the three, so definitely also browse our catalog to see the wide range on the slide.
Exactly.
Also I showed earlier.
Exactly, and actually I think some of Susanna's conversations will speak to that a little bit. But so without further ado, I'd love to just pass it over to you, Susanna, and learn a little bit more about you and how you teach with Labster.
Thank you. My background is that I got my PhD in biomedicine from Icahn School of Medicine, and I started my teaching very soon afterwards. So I wanted to kind of introduce the students to this lab experience that I was coming from. And when you come into a high school environment, it's very different than from university level and a graduate research center, where you had access to all kinds of equipment, where I did stem cell research and we had access to mammalian cell culture and stem cells and all, next generation sequencing and all and even some of the newer techniques being used. And so, of course, none of this exists in most high school laboratories, and it's not even allowed, no matter how advanced the laboratory might be. And so Staten Island Academy is a small private independent co-ed school, and it's pre-K through 12. So being the department chair, I oversee the lower school, the middle school, and the upper school sciences. And for that reason, I wanted to introduce interactive laboratories, but we were working with this limitation that, okay, our classes are about 45 minutes to an hour long. Most of them are 45 minutes, and then we'll have a couple of sessions per cycle that are an hour. So we don't have double periods, which I know in some high schools you do and in some you don't. And in addition, the typical things that I got really excited about in science when I was working in you know, at the graduate school is they're not available to high schools, you know, that level. Certainly, I doubt that most high schools use cell culture, and you know, maybe if you're using bacteria and things like that, but certainly not animal or any kind of mammalian cells. So I wanted to figure out how to introduce them to them, because these are the things that got me excited about science. When I first came, I already started looking into how I'm going to do this. So I actually contacted Labster the summer before we began, because I wanted to have this up and rolling. And the advantage of being in a small school where you don't have a lot of bureaucracy is that you know, my administrators and my directors loved the idea. We got it approved very quickly, and we had a pilot with Google that Labster facilitated, where we were using actually their standalone headset. So this is a virtual headset, because I wanted to at least introduce them to this immersion experience. In practice, we only were able to use this several times a year because it does take time. There's, you know, there's a whole setup required with actually using virtual headsets. So what we wound up using most of the time were actually the web-based versions, and we continue to use that. And of course, right now during this COVID-19 situation, this is obviously the most relevant tool that I'm sure most of you are interested in. So coming in my first year, I was teaching AP Biology, AP Chemistry, and AP Psychology. And I was also teaching Oceanography and Astronomy. So it was a fun class load, but luckily, Labster actually had a lot of simulations for all of those, less so for Oceanography, but I was able to find a marine biology simulation under the biology section. So regular biology I'm doing this year. We offer AP Chemistry alternate years, so I have more of the biology courses, and but overall I've got to use it in all of these different topics. So I guess I'll go through a little bit how I was able to use at least an example one, but as you'll see when you get to go through the catalog, there's actually you know, ways to apply certain biology simulations, for instance, to classes like AP Psychology or Oceanography, and certain physics simulations that you can apply, for instance, in astronomy. So I would really encourage everyone to look at the full catalog, because you'll find that whatever courses you're teaching, you know, if it's a science course, there might be something that's applied to what you're doing. Like in AP Psychology, when we were doing the biological basis of behavior, I used the action potential Labster simulation. There's an endocrinology simulation, which I do a topic on that in AP Psychology. So you know, even signal transduction is relevant in AP Psychology as well as in AP Biology. And I of course save certain advanced simulations for just the AP Biology. For instance, I don't try to teach next generation sequencing to my regular biology class, but there's a ton of simulations that are just as applicable to your regular classes if you're not teaching at the AP level. And I would say, in fact, most of them. And certainly, if you see certain topics for which there are, you know, certain parts of it that are advanced, you can always jump in and help the students along with that if you're doing it in class with them, and then, you know, let them do the other parts on their own, you know, as a directed learning. So in terms of how I typically incorporate a Labster simulation, as I mentioned, the way that I currently teach, I try to have sort of a multimodal approach where I try to get at several senses at once. So something visual, something auditory, you know, for those individual learners, something that they can take back to learn on their own. And of course, some, you know, for the kinesthetic learners, something physical or practical where they're doing actual exercises from practice-based learning. And this is kind of an example of where I used a simulation for AP Biology. And I tend to start, and some of you who have also done the flipped classroom technique where you do an introduction to topic maybe with some other modality other than you talking about it, I like to start with a little video. Crash course videos that are widely available is a good example. Study.com has these resources, though they're not free. Crash Course is free, Bozeman Science. So there's a ton of videos on the internet that are great for a 5-10 minute introduction to a topic. And I like to do that to give the students a feel. I then introduce the learning objectives for that topic, which could be in the form of questions. You know, how do you determine whether somebody has a genetic disease, or how do scientists figure this out, or what, you know, just basic questions to kind of pique their interest. And this is also a way to introduce the topic and discuss what kinds of things you're going to talk about as a kind of an overview. You know, the next part would be the actual, you know, your traditional lecture. And some of you are used to doing this on board. I actually prefer more of a PowerPoint because I think the students like to see how topics are organized in a hierarchical fashion. And, you know, everybody has their own preference. But I think right now, because we're in this situation where unless you have special, you know, technology, it's very hard to do whiteboard lessons right now. So in fact, this has really worked well for me because I just share my screen and I go through the PowerPoint as I usually would have. And you still, you know, we stop for questions and little example videos because I like to use as much visual stimulation as possible when I teach the biology class. So, you know, for instance, one topic that I'm using an example here is genetics and inheritance. And, you know, some of the key topics we begin with is we give a history of how Mendel was studying genetics, some of the, you know, the crosses, the Punnett squares. And I apologize for some of you who are more not from the biology field, but I saw that the poll said that a lot of you were actually using this for biology. So you'll probably know what I mean. And so we'll teach some of the key concepts, you know, the monohybrid, the dihybrid crosses, doing a pedigree tree, and of course zygosity, heterozygosity, and you know, these are the more basic genetics concepts. And before we go on, let's say, to do more application based, you know, we'll do some sort of learning activity where it could be a worksheet where they try to do work with the Punnett squares, of course, where I give them some directed help here. And, you know, we'll do the monohybrid and dihybrid crosses. They could do a pedigree tree. And so once they get some of these basic techniques down, you can actually go and, you know, go into an application lecture. So, okay, you learn these concepts in genetics. Well, how are they implied in real life? Why do we care, right? So you can go into genetic diseases and how they're inherited, and also how they're tested, right, in the modern world. So how do people find out about their genetic diseases? You know, you can even incorporate into your lectures other, you know, and with the AP, with the big ideas, you'll know what I'm talking about, where you can incorporate, for instance, evolution, right? So when we talked about monogenic disorders like sickle cell disease, we talked about the evolutionary advantage of heterozygosity and, you know, kind of connecting those concepts together. So this is where you have the expansion of the original topics you taught to application in the real world. And the other thing that you know, is great here is you can introduce techniques. Now, with AP Biology, often biotechnology can be taught as its own concept. But what's really nice is that when you can incorporate it into throughout the lecture, there's a lot of opportunities to incorporate biotechnology. So here you get to talk about detection techniques or techniques to study, let's say, you know, genetics. So in this case, we were, you know, we talked about gel electrophoresis and PCR, and we talked about, you know, kind of fingerprinting techniques and all of these type of biotechnologies that exist for detection of, you know, genetics and studying it. And so the next thing that you could do is, this is a good time to have a Labster, because now something like monogenic disorders, it's a monogenic disease, cystic fibrosis. And here there was the application of the pedigree. There was the application of the gel electrophoresis to detect it. They even had the whole idea of connecting it to the real world, like what careers are applicable in studying or looking into this. So the idea of medical genetics, the idea of studying things in a lab, what people in a lab generally do. And one of the AP biology labs actually includes a sickle cell disease lab, which this is a physical lab. And it's great because by doing, let's say, a monogenic disorder like cystic fibrosis first in a simulated form, you're really getting the hang of the concept here, which is a similar concept, and also the techniques used. Now, Labster, they have the simulations for the pipettes. And it was funny because when we actually did the real sickle cell disease lab, like, oh, this pipette, this is just like in Labster. I'm like, yes, great. So, it kind of speeds things up for your actual lab for those of you who have limited time with your students. Like I said, for me, I had to kind of find a way to borrow a double period from, an advisory slot and try to get them to have the full experience. But I had to break up the physical lab into several stages because of all the incubation times. You, of course, don't have to worry about that with Labster simulations because they kind of speed you through the incubation times. And so that's the nice part. You don't have to wait a couple days. You don't have to wait half an hour or an hour for, the gel to polymerize or whatever it is. But in real life, we did. But it was nice that they weren't coming to this whole experience. This was their first time experiencing these techniques, this equipment. And having seen it in that simulated form definitely made my life a little easier in terms of it wasn't completely new and we can go a little bit faster. And the nice part here is, once again, the gel electrophoresis experiment that they did in the simulation, they got to revisit it, but there was additional techniques used. So they got to see things more, from the beginning to end of what you could do downstream and how it's applied in a medical setting a little more. And of course, you could you can complete that topic or module with either a quiz. Right now, maybe some people are moving away from traditional quizzes unless they have good software to do that with some integrity there. But a lot of times, I think right now people are moving into different types of assessments, and it's very easy to give an assessment, just a written assessment, to assess the skills, where you ask an AP biology, for instance, to apply this concept further. Like I mentioned, asking them about how they could speak as to the evolution of these disorders or these genetic mutations, how they can connect that to, the molecular biology or metabolism, or the biochemistry lecture that we probably, we went over in the beginning of the year, actually, in terms of the hemoglobin molecule, or in cystic fibrosis, the pathology of it, how it connects all together. So there's a lot of opportunities for assessments when you've presented them with so many different ways of looking at the topic. Where you don't have to even do a traditional quiz, but you could still, genuinely test their understanding of the concept and how they connect it. And of course, the AP exams this year, as you know, are shortened and at home. And so this is a better way of testing them and preparing them right now anyway, because it's not going to be a multiple choice. It's going to be a way where you have to apply the concepts and connect it, and probably use some data analysis or some sort of analysis of the concept and connect it with other topics. So
Suzanna, I'll bring in a question from the audience here also, because that was one of the commonly asked questions. So what do you in general do with assessment? So there's of course the grading within Labster itself, but as you also outlined here, there's the more holistic grading of the entire experience. Can you maybe talk a little bit more to that and how you do it?
Sure. So now some people are able to integrate it directly with their Blackboard. I didn't do that. I actually use the Labster learning management system. That works better for me because we use a different one. I believe it's Final Sight. And so the way that we do our portal works is that we have set grade categories, and I attribute percentages to them. So for me, it's much easier to use what I get from Labster and determine, do I want to use this as a quiz grade today? Do I want to use that as a project grade or a classwork grade or, a lab grade? So I get to decide. So I just look at what, the LMS on Labster tells me, and I decide, okay, well, I told the kids that this one is going to be more of like a quiz grade, so they have a different, expectation of how to treat that particular lab. Also, some of them I do in class, like I was doing in class before this happened, and they were able to, let's say, finish it and redo it at home, or if they ran out of time, for instance, which could happen quite frequently, because Labster integrates the theory of each topic as you go along and you do the interaction, which is great, because especially if you're in a situation where you're using that Labster to emphasize a topic or give them an immersion for it, it's a way for them that if they're having any gaps with it, they could read the theory during. Now that, of course, makes it go a little longer. So I don't expect them to necessarily finish that in a 45-minute period, but they can go home and finish it there, and it saves from your last spot. I also, in my case, give them the opportunity to have 3 tries to do it, because it's not a problem for me that they take longer. What's important is that they're getting the concepts and they're getting those quiz questions, and they're finishing it. And repetition only works in my favor in this case, because they're revisiting the concepts every time.
You get also the students who might otherwise be struggling, you get them to catch up also and make sure they master the concepts. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as far as the learning management system, it's very nice. You basically see all the tries that the student took. So I give them 3, so I could see, okay, they took 3 tries to do it. Sometimes you'll see, okay, a student took 1 try and they got an 80 something. Well, I might give them a reminder, hey, you might want to redo that before this is due, because this is your opportunity to maximize your grade. So you see, as soon as they did it, the percentage completion as well as their grade. In my case, my policy is that I actually take the top of the 3 grades, and you could have your own way of managing that. For instance, if you're using it as a homework or a project or a lab grade, you might want to give them these extra opportunities, because it's about understanding the concept. If you're using this as an assessment, maybe you want to give them 1 or 2 tries, because then what they could do is they can access those theory pages separately without beginning the simulation. And they can actually prepare themselves by reading through the theory pages before they even click on the start of the simulation, so that they don't have to take that extra time to read through the actual theory pages. So that's
actually, and you're already answering now several of the questions, which is great. So someone also asking if there are specific note sheets or things that the students can do also to help prepare themselves for the simulation. So that's one thing. And I just want to, as we're on it here, to one other question around whether there's a training module for the students to become familiar with the sims. And I can quickly answer that there's a welcome video for every student, just a short welcome video. And then as a start of every simulation, they have the option to go through a sort of a training on how to use the sims. So Susanna, I also realize, probably mindful of time, but maybe one more question, Susanna, and then we can slowly move on also. So you talked about how you were choosing the different sims, and some were for AP level, but you could still use it at a different level. So there's a question on how you differentiate between the different labs. And I can quickly add, so at Labster, we do the initial course mapping, so it aligns to NGSS and different standards, as Mark outlined. But also, can you talk a little bit more about that, Susanna? How do you differentiate between the sims? Is it looking at the learning outcomes, for instance, or how do you do that? Yeah.
So I could say that all the biology ones are relevant for AP biology for the most part. There's some that are more medical genetics that you can decide whether you want to give that as an optional. But I would say that pretty much for any AP level or college level type of class, they're fine. Now, in terms of, let's say, regular biology, I would usually go through to see, and Labster offers a quick overview as well for every simulation, like which techniques are used and which concepts are covered. So I try, especially when they have like biotechnology that's used, that I feel is just a bit above their what they need to learn to understand the concept, I don't go into it. Like, I focus more on those type of things for AP biology when it comes to advanced concepts that are not typically covered in detail for regular biology, right? Like stem cell culture, viral gene therapy. You can introduce that concept to your regular biology class, but to really understand it in a way that they can apply it and immerse themselves with it, it might be a little too advanced. Certainly next generation sequencing or these modern techniques that are used in the lab, I would say I try to maybe stay clear of that. But most of the concepts that I use in biology where they're not using these advanced techniques or advanced equipment, I think are fair game, right? So most of the things I've used for AP biology were relevant in the regular biology class. I might not just hold them to it when there comes for a final assessment, right? So they'll still get an understanding of, let's say, how something is applied on a medical level, but I don't need to necessarily test them in the end on how to do, some sort of complicated pedigree or a rare case scenario or an edge case in biology. I might just want to introduce that as a concept for interest, but you don't have to test it. So you could still use even some of the more advanced labs, because Labster does walk you through on how, on all of the, theory needed to answer the questions, but you just don't have to really hold them to it.
Great, awesome. So I guess with that, Mark, we should slowly move on to the second. We'll do more questions. We'll try and cover as many
questions coming up soon. But exactly, and one other point I just want to emphasize is that of course Labster does get used in a lot of different ways, even in terms of when you are using it to complement your in-person class and your physical labs, like Suzanna was describing, or in other cases where it's a completely online class, even in normal times, and just a complete lab replacement, or in other cases where it's just simply like almost a lecture supplement, and you're using that to help, kind of enhance the students' learning on that particular subject area. So it really, as you've heard already, it can get used in very different ways in very different courses and contexts. So I'll just say a couple of quick words about access here. That Labster, it's very accessible. All you need is an internet connection, essentially, right? Any kind of laptop or desktop. So Labster is best from a computer, absolutely. And if you think about the experience, it's immersive virtual 3D experience, right? And so, typically on a tiny little screen, you wouldn't have the same effect. So it really is optimized for laptops and desktops. We say the Chrome and Firefox browsers especially, and if students just leave it open for a few minutes, we have kind of a very complex experience that we're loading on the back end. So it's always some of the tips that we give when people are first using Labster for the first time. Michael, you already mentioned this before, but we have a quick access setup model that I think Michael probably put together working 72 hours straight over a weekend. It's like March, if my memory serves. But essentially, it's designed to just with a couple of clicks get your students accessing Labster to make everything easier. So I'm guessing a lot of the people on this call today, even who may have been using us in the past few weeks, have been using this quick access model. It doesn't necessarily include all of the back end bells and whistles necessarily, but again, we're emphasizing access right now, kind of an unpaid model, and trying to leave this open for those who need it this year. So absolutely, you can request us in the chat window on our site, or ask send any support issues into that, and we have a team that's working almost 24 hours a day at this point to respond to those queries. When you do get access set up in this way, it's simply a link. So you get one link, and it's one link per teacher if you request access for a few different teachers, and that's your link. That's all you need. So just take that link and email it to students, post it online for students, whatever you need, but that's the link for all of your students, and they can use that to get access. They simply click it, open up the page, and click one of the simulations that you ask them to find and to play, and they can start playing once they're.
And maybe while we add that, so what Mark just described is this our chat, live chat on the website. You go there in the lower right corner, and the top question here is also around if we can describe the pricing structure and if it's posted somewhere. So what you go is just go to that chat, and we will have our team respond to your specific case and scenario, and so you can get the pricing and also jump on a call if you have follow-up questions. So that's the way to address that.
Exactly, that's a really good point. And I'll say on that front, again, at this moment, we are trying to open up access as much as possible. So we encourage you, get in there, start playing simulations. Encourage your colleagues to start taking a look and kind of get a sense of what the student experience is and how your students are responding to it and liking it. And then especially, I think, a little bit later on this year, at the school level and at the district level, having conversations, and pricing obviously always depends on some degree. to some degree on where you're coming from and how many students we're talking about.
And I would also say definitely talk with your district leaders, CTO, CIOs, because we're already in conversations with many of them about full rollout with even LMS integration and so forth. So the more they're aware that you're interested in using it, that can also help us accelerate those rollouts. So do share your interest with the district leaders as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, we described the quick access model. This is the full lab solution, which Michael just mentioned, is kind of ideal for schools and for districts. This includes some of the options we were discussing before: student grading, kind of a teacher dashboard, options for LMS integration into Google Classroom and Canvas and things like that. So a lot of opportunities there as well down the line as more and more folks think about next year, perhaps. So that's our quick overview. Now let's jump into maybe some of the unanswered questions here. So the first one I see up at the top here, and as Michael mentioned, you can upvote questions, is: I'm a teacher in the public school system. How can I get access during COVID-19? Also, is there HPLC, GCMS, and atomic emission spectroscopy in the chem lab? So I will say that Michael just described, go to our website, just open up the chat window, and very quickly we'll get you into essentially our COVID-19 landing page where you can request access.
Like a guided tour, yeah, it guides you through it step by step, yeah.
Exactly. HPLC is one of our most popular simulations, so yes. For some of these other topics, you know, I would say, you know, diving a little bit more deeply into what's available, but definitely spectroscopy is something that we're you know, publishing more and more simulations on. So yeah, so a lot more information can be found, I think.
Yeah, and we will send out that PDF you talked about earlier, Mark, and also what you can do is go to labster.com/simulations. That's the whole catalog, and there's a little search box at the top right, and you can search for any topic, and we'll search like the learning outcomes and the descriptions of the sims and so forth, so that you can easily find any sim that you might be looking for. Exactly. Keep in mind though, we launch literally every month new sims, so do search, come back and search for more. There's a lot launching every month. Yeah.
So the next question is about: how accessible are the simulations for English language learners? So I can, Michael, feel free to jump in, but we do have translated simulations, some that are in Spanish, absolutely, some really key simulations, a few in other languages as well. And we're always translating more simulations. At this point, the vast majority are primarily in English, but it's absolutely something that we're kind of making updates on in terms of translating more simulations.
But I would also say
visual too.
Yeah, everything has voiceovers, and all texts have voiceovers. We have a whole accessibility roadmap to ensure high accessibility as well, according to those standards. So that also means that everything can be read at the student's own pace, and they can have it reread if they want that, and so forth. So typically we don't see it as a challenge, but as Mark says, also Spanish, for instance, is supported as well.
Yeah, exactly. So and another, I just with that word accessible, I'll mention that, you know, accessibility is also always top of mind for us. And as you may have seen from the demo, these are complex 3D experiences, but we're always converting more of our simulations to be more accessible and more open. So you can find more information about that in the footer of our website. We have an accessibility page where you can kind of see what our commitment is and some of the progress that we're making over the course of this year. Is there a way to have only 2 labs from the package show up at a time for students to see only the simulations they need to work on? At the moment, in the quick access model, at least, it's kind of all you can eat, and part of the reason there is just for the simplicity's sake, because every time that we have curation happening and you only pick out your 2 or 3 or 4 simulations that you're wanting them to work on right now, it's a little more complex. For the full Labster solution, absolutely. It's a completely curated.
I'll give a little pro tip though. What you can do also is, if you as a teacher go in on that quick access page, you right click the play simulation button, you can just copy basically that link and copy it into your LMS in Google Classroom or Blackboard or anything. That way you have a direct link to your specific class lectures setup or quick access setup. So that's it's actually written in the help center as well. So there's a little guide. If you go to help.labster.com and then write quick access, there's a guide with more information on how to do this. Yeah.
Exactly. So go to the support page. Our help center always has a lot of information that can help answer some of these questions. That's a great tip though, Michael. Yeah, sending the individual links can really help a lot. do you provide on-site professional development? Right now, we do not. I think in the future, as we work with more and more high schools, I think these things might sort of on-site opportunities may be more possible. There are opportunities potentially for you know, a live demo or training in certain cases, but that really depends. As you might imagine, you know, we are scrambling right now to serve the huge numbers of people using Labster as best we possibly can. So we're trying to make everything count. So we're hopefully doing more trainings like this as much as possible. But in the future, I think stay tuned for more training and potentially professional development opportunities too. We did mention, I think, pricing a little bit, that it really will vary. But at this point right now, if you're just a teacher coming to us, needing access right now for your students, you can sign up to the website and essentially get free access without any major blockers. So I'd encourage you to do that today, absolutely. And we can have a sort of a separate conversation about, I think, about pricing at district and school levels too.
Oh, and if I can jump in with the hardware. So we bought the Google Daydream platform, which is the Lenovo Mirage Solo. At the time, that was like one of the newer things. There might be other ones that are out now. I believe at the time it was about $400 a piece. And you know, you figure my recommendation is that do this with smaller class sizes, unless you have other auxiliary faculty who can come and support you during the process, because students will need help navigating that, especially in the beginning and getting used to the headset. And jumping from one student to the next for one person is difficult to do, especially your first couple of times until they get used to it. But I think there are, you know, other pricing solutions. We went with the standalone headset because we didn't want to have wires when they're doing this. So there's some solutions that include you putting a phone in the headset. There's some that use a laptop. I do recommend the standalone ones. Just keep in mind that we purchased a decent amount of them just to make sure that if we want to break it down into using them, let's say the same day, they do need a charge time in between usages, especially if you're doing it for the full hour, for it to really, you know, not glitch on you. I think they have like a 3-hour max, at least this particular headset. So you want to be able to charge them in between. So you might want to maybe get more if you're planning to do 2 classes at once in a day. But generally, I would recommend, you know, with smaller class sizes.
Absolutely, no, that's a great point.
Starting with the laptop experience is the easiest, then also students get familiar with it, and then slowly introducing the VR headset as an optional, maybe.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
And, exactly. I think a lot of people find the web just access-wise much easier, but as you say, in certain cases, people may kind of upgrade. So we just have a couple minutes left here before we hit the hour mark, and I want to be respectful of people's time. We'll answer a couple of questions here, and then maybe do, if there are any final notes that Michael, you or Susanna have. Human anatomy and physiology, I believe there are a couple of simulations that are relevant to human anatomy and physiology in the high school package. I need to double check that. We did just launch a couple of new simulations in this space, but I will say that we have quite a few simulations on the physiology topic they tend to be a bit more animal physiology. And a lot that are relevant in these areas, frankly, because as you've heard today, so much of our content can be pulled into different buckets and different topic areas. But we don't right now have an enormous catalog when it comes to human anatomy and physiology. So I would say that there's not too much there in the biology or in the high school package in general at the moment. So I think just in the interest of kind of wrapping up here, Michael, was there anything else that you wanted to kind of close with or have keep people?
I think I just want to say thank you everyone, guys, for joining in on this session and for all the good questions and so on. And we will typically even maybe follow up on some of those questions in the follow-up email. Yeah, it's also a good sign that we should have more sessions like this. So please also do share with us what you'd like from the session, what would you like to learn more about, and how can we maybe set up more professional development webinars so we can actually already now start some good training here online. And yeah, I think those are the main, and thank you, Suzanna, especially for sharing all your great insights and knowledge with all of us, really, me as well. I'm always learning here. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this as well.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Absolutely. Check out labster.com, our support page, our chat window, and we hope to keep talking with you more very soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Guys,
Bye.
bye.